Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Less than 24 hours to go before the Prime Minister sends off that letter to Brussels, triggering Article 50 and beginning the process of taking Britain out of the EU. Speaking in Birmingham today, Theresa May said she wanted to shape a bigger role for Britain in the world, but promised to secure new, deep and special partnership with the EU. But are both those aims possible? In a moment, we'll be hearing from Jackie Long, who's in Grimsby, where there was a big Leave vote last summer. But first, let's cross to our Europe editor, Matt Fry, who's in Brussels tonight.
So, John, tomorrow at about 12:30 London time, 1:30 local time, the British ambassador to the EU, Sir Tim Barrow, will drive that letter that you mentioned from the embassy, which is literally about 100 metres that way, to the council building, which is about 60 metres that way. I'm assuming he's not going to walk it, he's probably going to drive it. He'll then pull up and hand the letter over to Donald Tusk, the President of the European Council. And then we're off to the races, although the races actually only really get underway in May. Now, on the eve of this momentous event, of which there is relative relief here because they've been waiting for 9 months for the actual divorce proceedings to start and they want to eventually get this off their table, there have been a couple of very clear messages to London. Number one, do not expect you to be able to have trade negotiations with the EU in parallel with the divorce proceedings. In other words, divorce first, then we talk about trade. Now, that makes the timing for Theresa May and any vote in Parliament extremely complicated because all that will be on the table in 2 years' time will be the divorce and not what replaces it. The second thing is, as long as you're still a member of the EU, in other words, until that divorce paper is actually signed, you have all the rights and obligations of a European Union member. That means everyone who wants to come in from Poland or Bulgaria to live and work in London or in Birmingham or in Sunderland can do so until that divorce is done. And everyone from Britain who wants to go to the EU can also work there and live there freely for the next few years. So that will be quite interesting when it comes to immigration numbers. And finally, they said, any outstanding bills, that 50 billion quid bill that Jean-Claude Juncker mentioned the other day, which might be a little bit less at the end of the day, they will have to be paid before we can start any trade negotiations. So the negotiations, the divorce talks, are very much weighted at the moment against London. Now, they're saying that they're not trying to punish London, but watch this. It's a teachable moment for the rest of the EU and any members who might be contemplating their own exit.
And Matt, the Eurocrats of Brussels had a pre-trigger visitor today, I gather.
They did. On the train from London, one Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, who came here essentially to say, look, London voted to be with you. You know, we're the bloated, very important child that actually wanted to stay with the other parent on the other side of the channel. Now that that is not possible, he dropped effectively a kind of love bomb, saying, if you're nice to us, the UK will be nice to you, and if you all get along with each other, then there won't be any harm. Frankly, I don't know to what extent people here found that convincing or indeed important, considering that there are all these other issues on the table. Because one final thing, John, people here don't really want to talk about Brexit. Now, we will be talking about it ad nauseam for the next 2 years, but here they want to talk about other things: the future of the European Union, monetary union, Greece, migration, Turkey, all that stuff. Brexit is an unwelcome distraction.
Matt in Brussels, thank you. Grimsby boasted the biggest fishing fleet in the world in the middle of the last century, but that all went after the Cod Wars, and the town has struggled ever since. It was one of the biggest supporters of Brexit, with a 70% vote for leaving last June. So how's it feeling now? Jackie Long's there tonight. Jackie.
I'm in Grimsby's old fish docks. They're hugely proud of their fishing heritage here, though these days it's much more about processing other people's fish from other countries, than it is about actually fishing. Now, while the split between the in and out vote across the country at large was relatively narrow, here it was overwhelming, 70% to 30% in favour of leaving the EU. Now, as tomorrow approaches and some of the complexities of the Brexit process have been becoming apparent, I've been talking to voters, most of them who voted out, and asking them how confident are they that Brexit will actually deliver? Will it actually make lives better for people here? Or whether that even matters? Like waiting for the holidays to begin. Tomorrow can't come soon enough for the people who want out. The sea has shaped the landscape and people's lives here. Now, how will Brexit do the same? Grimsby was the biggest and busiest fishing port in the world. But the fishing industry went into almost terminal decline in the 70s. Sam Bratley voted out, but says he's not naive. He's not expecting a return to Grimsby's boom years.
There's no boats left of our own, as such. So there's nothing there for them, there's nothing coming through.
So, fundamentally, you're saying things might not change?
Might not change.
But you're still glad that...
Yeah. Why should we be ruled by someone in Brussels when we fought 2 wars to be free?
I'm 69 years old, so it'll probably bugger me pension up when we go into Brexit. So I voted to stay in. The majority of the people want to be out, and I can't argue with that.
Does it make you sad, nervous, anxious?
Probably a little sad.
Pessimistic?
No, I'm a born optimist. I am an optimist, you know. I think we'll still be here. Whether I'm still here, I don't know, but I think the country will still be here and there'll still be trade and people will be doing much as they are today.
Even here, where the vast majority of people voted to leave back in June, the intervening months have proved how complicated the process itself might be.
Nobody would have actually thought about all the details and the issues that have now come out of the woodwork about Brexit. I don't think anybody would have realised the thousands of laws and the difficulty of actually extracting ourselves from a system. But I also think that the decision's been made and we've got to make the best of it.
In the run-up to the referendum, UKIP's Nigel Farage said the fishing industry would be a touchstone for Brexit, getting our waters back the measure of a successful exit. But even here, where that promise holds such appeal, many are uncertain it can be delivered. As tomorrow approaches and that exit begins, they live in hope rather than expectation. Back in the fish market, these days it's more about processing other countries' fish. The EU blamed for destroying their industry with its quotas. The tens of millions in EU grants dismissed as getting back only what was put in. Will Brexit actually make lives better? At the moment, that doesn't seem to matter. There's an awful lot of hopes being pinned on leaving the EU, but will it reinvigorate?
Well, it won't make any difference to this place now.
How much was this about pride or identity or?
Well, I think a lot of it is. You know, we're getting dictated to, aren't we? By Merkel, Hollande, and all the rest of them. Juncker, Tusk. You know, they're telling us what we can do with our lives, and it's not so. It shouldn't be so. We're a sovereign state. We're an island.
So do you feel a sense of pride at coming out?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, of course I do. You know, you can call me a little Englander, you can call me what you like, but I'm English and I'm British, and that's the end of it.
But tomorrow, of course, is just the beginning, and some are urging caution.
We need to understand that people are acting in the best interests of the UK and trying to do what people voted for. But in actual fact, what did we vote for? And that's the problem, nobody really knows.
What exactly did Britain vote for? That will undoubtedly be one of the questions that we'll be talking about at a special audience debate across the Humber in the city of Hull, the UK's city of culture, which also resoundingly voted to leave the EU. We'll be talking to business people, workers, voters in and out, young and old, asking what sort of Britain Brexit will lead us into and what happens next. But that, for now, is it from us.
Jackie Long in Grimsby. We're joined now by 2 people who've been debating in Parliament for more than a quarter of a century. Lord Heseltine served in the Thatcher and Major cabinets of the 1980s, 1990s, became Deputy Prime Minister, First Secretary of State, worked as an advisor to the coalition and Conservative governments before being sacked earlier this month after rebelling over the Article 50 bill in the House of Lords. Kate Hoey entered the Commons in 1989, a Labour MP and one-time Minister of Sport. As a Eurosceptic and libertarian, she has frequently voted against her party and was co-chair of the Labour Leave campaign. Michael Heseltine, you're an old warhorse, I could say. Yeah. What happens next?
Well, as I understand it, the letter under Article 50 will be delivered tomorrow.
But as you, somebody who is passionate about remaining in Europe, is it all over?
Oh, no. The letter will represent the biggest sacrifice of British sovereignty that I can remember. And what's now going to happen is that the Europeans will tell us the conditions on which we can trade with our biggest market. And when that becomes apparent, all the stuff about gaining sovereignty, putting ourselves in charge, will be exposed for the hypocrisy that it was. You see, what's happening tomorrow is the one thing that Margaret Thatcher was frightened of, is losing control over the conditions in which British companies, our trade and industry, actually operate in our biggest market. That's what tomorrow represents. It is the biggest sacrifice of British self-interest I know of.
Supposing you're wrong.
Well, if I'm wrong, the events will unfold. But what's going to happen tomorrow is that the old airy phrases about money being released, about 350 million a day to the health service, all that stuff, the bus, do you remember? That's going to be replaced by the hard, factual reality.
Don't you think
the Europeans are going to tell us the conditions on which we can trade in our biggest market?
But there are some who really believe that Europe was an elitist operation and that, in fact, in the end, you know, the comfortably off have done well, but there is still a great number of people who are really left without.
Well, I hitchhiked around Europe in the 1950s. I saw what Europe was like. I have some idea of what this country was like. And although we've gone through nearly a decade of frozen living standards, there is no comparison with the conditions that existed in Europe 20, 30, 40 years ago. There are problems, there are always problems in politics. But the fact of the matter is that the European unity has achieved peace, it's achieved democracy, it's got rid of the fascists in Spain and Portugal, it's got rid of the colonels in Greece, and we relatively are prosperous. And why do I say that? Why do you think all these immigrants are coming here? Because we are amongst the most prosperous parts of the world.
Kate Hoey, what do you think happens tomorrow?
Well, I'm looking forward to tomorrow. I think the public will be delighted that finally we're going to be able to get on with actually beginning these negotiations. And I think, you know, the more that people go on and say about how the EU countries are going to treat us, the more I think that the public will think, well, thank goodness we're actually voted to leave, because, you know, you can't be part of an organisation that is seriously going to try and punish us. And I'm very confident about our negotiations because, you know, the EU need us as much as we need them. And clearly we have an opportunity now to be even better off longer term.
Better off without Northern Ireland, without Scotland?
Well, I mean, those are two. I think the reality is of Scotland, that would be happening whatever. Brexit is just an excuse, and I understand the Scottish leader why she's doing it now, but, you know, I don't think Theresa May will give in on that. On Northern Ireland, you know, let's
will it matter if Scotland breaks away? Do you mind?
Well, I'm very supportive.
Don't really mind.
I support the United Kingdom. I'd like to see it stay. But ultimately, you know, there will be another referendum in Scotland.
We're seeing real change in Northern Ireland. I mean,
well, I think, you know, remember the vote in Northern Ireland on Brexit was much smaller, actually, the gap than people had thought it would be.
But it isn't. That is what's happened since. The South is now saying they would welcome Northern Ireland.
I'm on the Northern Ireland Select Committee. We were over in Dublin last week and we talked to the Irish senators and so on. They want to see no end to, you know, no borders coming up again. They really want to work with us. The problem again is that the European Union tries to interfere and will, even if, you know, the Republic of Ireland would like to be much more supportive, but the EU, they're they're fearful because they're part of the 27.
But you must admit, we have no idea what is actually going to happen to these nations. If it is possible Scotland could break away, and it is possible that Northern Ireland will go with the South.
Look, I know lots of people in Northern Ireland who voted to remain. That doesn't mean to say that they're going to vote to be part of a united Ireland. They're very proud of being British. They may have supported remain. I don't think that's an issue at all. I really don't.
Isn't the truth here that we've got two politicians, seasoned politicians, who actually have no idea how good or bad it's actually going to be?
Well, I feel that we are going to get back control of our economics
you feel,
again.
But you don't know.
Well, no one, of course, knows what we're going to end up, other than that we're going to be out of the internal market, we're going to be out of the customs union, and we're going to be able to make trade deals with the rest of the world. I'm positive. Let's stop being, I'm so fed up with everyone being so negative about this. This is a real opportunity.
But you'd agree, nobody actually knows.
A real opportunity.
You made a very important point. Kate doesn't know, I don't know, but it's much worse. The three ministers in charge don't know. One of the reasons I was so keen that they should be put in charge, and I said this long before Theresa May was Prime Minister, is because I thought at least they'd be able to tell us what the options are. And all we get now is endless comments in the national press saying that the three of them are fighting each other day by day.
Do you have confidence in Theresa May's government? Do you have confidence in Theresa May's government?
I have no confidence in the decision to rupture our relationship with our allies on the continent of Europe. Full stop. And nor did Mrs. May in April of last year, when she made a reasoned, logical speech setting out precisely why Britain self-interest.
And we're going to have a great relationship with the rest of the EU. They play fair with us, we play fair with them.
Both, we have to leave it, but thank you both very much indeed.
I've been